Let's turn our attention more to issues as it concerns the Nigerian youths. Whilst the Nigerian Youth Service has begun payments of the 77,000 naira monthly allowance as promised, jubilations are greeting this development. But those not captured on the program, those in the informal sector, are a little bit worried about the unemployment statistics. Now, this morning, joining us on the program is an avid economist and financial expert, Mr. Steve Nwachukwu, who joins us virtually from Orozo. Good morning to you, Mr. Steve. Can you hear me?
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Now, let's get straight into it. First off, I'd like to get your thoughts on the launch of the Nigerian Youth Academy and its mandate to empower Nigerian youths with the required skills before we delve into the unemployment statistics and if entrepreneurship can be a situation that fixes it.
Well, I think from the face value, it's quite a good laudable move. Anything you do, any such of program, initiatives, or schemes that can take the youth out of the streets, empower them, skill them, and give them some level of independency to operate within the economic space is welcome. So from the face value of such launch, it's good to have such kind of academy and multiple of them to empower and skill up the Nigerian youth. Like the statistics is also available that the population is well dominated by this very demography of the youth. Over 65 million are within the age of 17 to 21. So it's quite a very good program to take those youth, empower them and skill them, and take them away from the ritual certifications or the quest to certificate people than to skill them. So skilling them, giving them opportunity to learn one or two trades is the best approach. Thank you.
I like your emphasis on the face value of the project, but let's talk about its practicability. We saw the first 6 beneficiaries picked from 6 geopolitical zones given grants to start up their personal business. I think of the highest grants I saw was ₦1 million. I've seen reactions online to this monies given out as grants as against the current inflation rate and the true value of that money in terms of being a startup. Let's get your thoughts. How practicable is that sum in putting a youth on track to start up something, in quotes?
Yes, it's quite funny that you are handing out ₦1 million to Nigerians, and considering the fact that in the last 2-3 years, we have seen how much naira has been beaten and how much inflation has eaten deep and how much even the administration has devalued naira so far. So I think it's not realistic to start up or equip a Nigerian after a skill with ₦1 million. What will ₦1 million do? Is it to rent the shop or buy equipment or what? So depending, although yes, of course, you can also have a 500,000 that can also equip, depending the skill that you actually train that particular Nigerian or individual. But to have a peg, I don't know if 1 million is the minimum or 1 million is the apex or the ceiling. So I don't know for now, but I think they will communicate that later to Nigerians. But having said that, I think the word should be consigned to Nigerians and those of us who are the policy analysts is what is the size of the seed money? The seed money here is the venture capital, the initial capital deposit by the federal government to actually empower this youth. Do we have something in the region of trillion, or do we have something in the region of billion or million? So this is what should be more important, because we are looking at over 65 million Nigerians. The target of this program is to at least take, if at least 10 million Nigerians, 5 million Nigerians. So what is the size of the seed money or the capital base of this very scheme to be able to, after the training, to empower Nigerians? Or are they looking at, extending other programs of the national banks of Nigeria or national development banks like Bank of Agriculture, Bank of Industry, recapitalizing them so that they can absorb this number of people they will be turning out in the months and years to come to be able to access facilities from such institutions? So I think we need to hear more from the government, but what should be of concern should be the size of the capital, the size of the seed money that have been voted to for this very program, not actually how much has been given to Nigerians. Because like I said again, I don't know what is the ceiling, and I don't know what actually government has in mind and the kind of skill they're also looking at. There are skills that does not require even up to 500,000. There are some skills that will even require up to 50 million for you to start. So what should be of concern is the capital base of this very program, so that they can absorb, or so that they can actually impact in the lives of Nigeria. Not after training them, you are not equipping them to go to the field and learn their trade.
Now, Mr. Steve, it gets even more interesting on the preference of these Nigerian youths. As much as we talk to business experts like yourself and economic analysts, and we talk about the need to diversify our economy, citing the importance of agriculture, more young persons have a tendency to prefer more technological-driven skills. We're seeing an age where the use of the internet is more appealing to young persons who want to be content creators. A lot of them are not so inclined traditionally towards the traditional jobs where agri and other sectors are appealing to them. Do you think this should be a crucial factor in also itemizing the skills available to these young persons?
Of course. I'm sure that the partitioning or the structure of the program should tend towards these technology-based, digital-based skills than agriculture. Yes, agriculture is a large employer of labor. I'm sure that whatever you have should be somewhere around 50-40, 50-50 or 55-45% allocation of resources, or the structure of the program itself to train this number of youths. Yes, of course. We need to train Nigerians and also understudy what the world needs. What is the areas that you can train Nigerians, not even applying or looking for jobs here, that the rest of the world is looking for. For instance, there is this very Japa syndrome that is actually going on. And most of these young Nigerians that are passing through a lot to leave the shores of Nigeria, a good percentage of them, 70-80% of them, don't have any single skill. So the target of the government should also be, in as much as you cannot dissuade, in as much as you cannot stop Nigerians from this very mass exodus from the shores of this country, you need to give them skills so that wherever they find themselves, they can be able to be adding meaningfully to such an economy and earn a decent living. So I think the focus should be on digital, and beyond digital, it should also be wide, and there should be a survey to know the areas that the economy itself and the rest of the globe, the employment market needs this very labor force, and also giving opportunities where you can have entrepreneurs with good and beautiful, innovative ideas, empowering them and training them and giving them startups so that they can exploit the world. I think that should be the focus of this very organization, given the fact that the world is looking for the best brains, the world is looking for the best skills, so we can afford to give the world, given the fact we have the age on our side, we have this youth, and the rest of the world is looking for that size or that age bracket to work for their industry, to work in their labor force and the rest. So we need to skill them. When you skill them, they can even be a freelancers in the sense that they can be within Nigeria and still be contributing to the global market. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Steve. Now that we've established a background to this conversation, let's speak on this unemployment rate in Nigeria. The challenge here is in understanding the methodology used by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. Last year in 2024, in the third quarter, even when they published unemployment rate at 33.3%, a lot of eyebrows were raised. But under the new methodology released this year, unemployment is now reportedly at just a mere 4.3%. Please explain to us and the viewers this morning this methodology and how our unemployment statistics continues to more or less somersault in Nigeria.
Quite a big burden to explain what most of us have criticized. Most of us have also queried the Bureau of Statistics. It's not, in as much as the new methodology is the international labor standard. One thing again about policies and programs, both foreign programs or foreign treaties, is find the one that you can domesticate and the one you can fine tune for the peculiarity of your own environment. Yes, of course, that could be the world standard. Working for just an hour for a week qualifies that you are not employed. But one thing should also be put side by side with that 1 hour work for a week. It should be, what is the wage system in Nigeria? In Canada, they have a wage, a minimum wage of about $11 to $12 per hour. In US, it's around $8 to $10, depending the region. In Britain, it's about 8 to 10 pounds. Name it, country after country. I think the minimum around this very world, practicing this world best practice or world standards, is a minimum of $7. So come to think of applying such policy where our wage system is so weak, one of the ridiculous wage system, one of the lowest wage system we have. What is our minimum wage? It's less than around, is it around $70-something or thereabout?
By the new exchange rate is even lower. They're about $45, $46. Because if you take 70,000.
Oh, thank you. I'm using the old. I'm using because most of the states have not started implementing the new minimum wage.
70,000
okay.
minimum
So
wage.
Now, if you just oppose or subject the new minimum wage to the new exchange rate regime, which is now the order of the day, 8,500, because government have established it based on the fact that they have devalued naira and have benchmarked dollar to naira at 8,500. So it means that our minimum wage is somewhere even less than $34, $37. So just divide 37 against 36. So we still have something less than $1.2
per hour.
Per day.
Per day, rather.
No, per day. Per day. You were talking about a day, but they are talking about per hour, earning $7 per hour. So it's quite unfortunate that we have such a leadership, we have such a people who are not people-centric, who perhaps decides to dance around with some level of hypocrisy and the sycophancy around the government corridors. Those who does not believe in the well-being of Nigeria, those who perhaps believe that propaganda is the best way to go. So why would a government actually accept to adopt such kind of practice when you know for sure that when you have unemployment rate reduced to somewhere around 4.3 as it takes today, it sends a signal to the rest of the world that, well, you have the best of the economy. Your people are employed. Because given the current unemployment rate, we are one of the best in the world. Yes, 4.3%. When we should be, Nigerians are not employed, underemployed, and we are talking about 4.3%. You are giving a wrong signal or a wrong perception to the international community where they needed to help you. Based on the fact that your real unemployment is above 45, 48%, you are telling them 4.3%. So they don't help. They will not help you. They will tell you, oh, Nigeria is a well-employed, people are working. But when you give the wrong and right perspective, they will want to invest in that company because they know they will get a cheaper labor. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Steve, emphasis on this cheap labor, because more of the debates now on the remuneration people get in the informal sector where people work and earn per day, a day's job and what is paid on the streets. For those who engage in artisanal ventures or even the work they use on the streets, laborers, how do we break down these demographics of how our employment captures artisans and those in the formal sector? Do you think that we need to clearly use a methodology to present the world with the statistics as well?
Well, I think the best practice is what is also the best methodology to, capture these very groups and segments of the society is the very best practice of the tripartite side of it, which is the government, the private sector, and the labor. So I think that is the best. So when you are taking such decision, you are taking cognizance the wage bills, the concerns of the captains of industry who are playing in the private sector. Then you are also considering those who are in the public service working with government. Then you're also looking at from the perspective of the government, what is the size of the revenue of government to care and absorb or to accept whatever wage bill. But what should be of much concern to Nigerians and to government if we are sincere about our wage system or improving the wage system? We should rather work towards setting up a mechanism, a well-established mechanism for national wealth distribution. That should be the concern of government. A mechanism for national wealth distribution. And wage system is part of such process of distributing national wealth. So when someone works for the whole 30 days and you are paying him a minimum of 70,000 and 70,000 cannot even buy a thing in the market. So you are not distributing wealth. So government should put up that very program or a system where Nigerians will be rewarded. The national wealth can be distributed not just to the contractors, but what we have seen is an established and obvious, well-established system to distribute this very national wealth to few corrupt individuals. You will see a single contractors having to earn more than 1,000% from a job he did. Now a job will cost ₦1 billion and you pay him 10 billion naira. He has made times 10 of such very project. So we have only seen that established process of distributing national wealth to few individuals. So there should be a process to distribute these very national resources that God has blessed Nigeria with to the population, the entire population. So that should be the concern of government, not actually looking from this flimsy minimum wage or these areas that people don't actually benefit so much. We should have a system that gives to the people, a system perhaps that also care for the people from the process of, it can even be stipends to Nigerians. It can be a food bank where Nigerians can actually buy some certain items at a certain subsidized rate. That's a way of distributing national wealth to the population. Thank you.
Now, this is a key economic indicator, and like you said, this tripartite approach of those employed under the federal, state, and private sectors might not cater to the demographics entirely. But now in solving this problem, a lot of persons more or less throw in the word entrepreneurship. You can be self-employed. Can entrepreneurship fix the unemployment gap in Nigeria?
Of course. It has been proven statistically and practically that the entrepreneurs are the engine room of every economy. Individuals who runs 1, 2, or 3 businesses are the engine. They are the major aggregate of the purchasing power, or in fact, they are the main drivers of the economy, in the sense that if Dangote produces whatever he produces as a capitalist, as an industrialist, and you don't have these small businesses that will patronize or do their own mini jobs and buy their product, Dangote will collapse. So we need to empower individuals, we need to empower entrepreneurs so that they can also expand the economy. And they are the highest contributor or absorbers of labor. If an individual starts up a business, in the next 1, 2, 3 years, he has employed 3, 4, 5 persons. It means that 4 to 5 people have been taken out of labor force in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And times the number of such individuals, that's why we say that entrepreneurs are the highest employer of labor. So government need to do the basic. And what is this basic? Make sure that there is a conducive business environment for such entrepreneurs to strive. Ease of doing business has been touted by the last administration, having improved in our basis points, have totally collapsed as we speak, given the fact that the cost of living, cost of production, the cost of doing business have gone so much hard on Nigerians. So businesses have been displaced. Businesses are collapsing as a result. How many of these very entrepreneurs can endeavor? How many of these entrepreneurs can actually venture into their well-dreamed skills or well-dreamed entrepreneurs or their expatriates? So these are the challenges that the economy and the system is facing. So we need to encourage. And how do we encourage entrepreneurs? We need to make sure that the environment is conducive enough for them. We need to reduce these multiple taxations. We need to make sure that we don't choke and make the environment hostile for such businesses to strive. So we need to make sure, as we speak now, it's quite difficult for some of these entrepreneurs to rent spaces to practice their trade because renting now, the rentage is now for the bigs. I don't know how many entrepreneurs can afford to pay as a fresh entrepreneur. Some are even being displaced in the sense that they can't afford to renew their rent, their office space or their working space. So these are the challenges that is being faced, that entrepreneurs and small-scale businesses are being faced as we speak. So government needs to really sit up. A lot is going wrong. Like I said again, the statistics are there that a good number of Nigerians, businesses and entrepreneurial businesses are being displaced. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Steve, talking about that statistics, last year in the month of November, the Manufacturers Association lamented that by 34.6%, there was an increase in inventory of unsold goods, well within the margins of 1.4 trillion naira in its worth. You talked about the challenges of most of these entrepreneurs in poor power supply and the ease of doing business. Yet, we see another contradiction in terms of our GDP being driven by the service sector. Let us balance these conversations. What are the manufacturers really challenged with, and how can we drive real sector growth in the country?
Okay, first and foremost, let's believe, let's give that benefit of that the data and statistics being turned out by the regulatory or the authorities, that is the National Bureau of Statistics, are genuine, they are spotless, and they are the true reflection of data available. Let's believe that those numbers and data and statistics are not compromised. Let's believe that these are the true reflection of what the economy is. Yes, of course, when you speak to the issue of the service sector dominating our GDP, it should be a concern to the fiscal managers and fiscal players, in the sense that you cannot have the service sector contributing close to 58.3% to your GDP, while the agri sector is contributing around 25.5%, the industrial sector is contributing around 17.3% to the GDP, and growing less than 1.2 or 1.3%, while the service sector grows about 5.3%. So it should be a concern. Now you ask a germane question. Oh, how could you juxtapose this very statistical development, given the fact that the manufacturers are complaining of unsold goods worth over 1.4 trillion? So I think we should also subject these very statistics and numbers to these very realities from the data from the our manufacturer associations of Nigeria. But let's speak to the fact that the GDP is growing and is being driven by the service sector. Like I said again, yes, what are those very subsectors or sub-individual sectors that constitute the service sector? You have the banking sector, you have the telecommunication sector, you have the transportation sector, you have the retail sectors. A good percentage, 95% of these very individual subsectors of the service sector are all engaged in foreign made products. Like the retail, a percentage, 80 to 70% of the consumed items are all imported. So that's why you are having the industrial sector contributing only 17% to the GDP. So those goods and services we patronize, we buy in the supermarkets, in those shelves, are all imported. We are exporting jobs. So that's what those statistics speaks to. So when you have the real sector, we are buying those items from Dubai, we are buying it from China, we are buying from India, we are buying from Europe, we are buying from America. So we are just servicing the economies of other nations, not servicing our own economy. If our industrial sector is contributing close to 40-35%, and we are buying their products, those service sectors that will be making use of those industrial goods, we be servicing our own economy. Here we are contributing less. Our industrial sector is contributing less, meaning those goods and services we are consuming, we are rather servicing other economies of the world. So that is where the challenge is. The telecommunication is not a job absorbing or job intense absorbing sector. How many of the NTN, Etisalat, and Globacom offices do you see around? And how many are they employing Nigerians? Rather, they are laying their fiber optics and they are deploying to service their catchments or service the Nigerians. So this is where the challenge is. Nigerians are not being absorbed. These very areas that are growing are not labor intensive. They don't absorb Nigerians or take them from the labor force. That is what should be the concern of the fiscal authorities, not just having us celebrating the growth we are recording from somewhere around 2.71%. It's got up to 3.19%, 3.46%, and currently at 3.84%. Yes, it's a growth trajectory. It's recommended, it's good, but our concern should be, is this growth inclusive growth? Is it organic growth? Is it job absorbing growth? That should be the concern of Nigeria and the government. Thank you.
Very well elaborated there. I think these are very salient points that you have raised. But in some of the challenges that business owners, entrepreneurs continue to grapple with, especially with the cost of operations rising, in a time when electricity tariffs have skyrocketed, there's an epileptic power grid, the challenge with even powering gas and diesel run plants are even on the high. Do you foresee any respite going into the year? Because there are promises that certain deals has brokered between the likes of Dangote to bring down the prices of petroleum products would aid in reducing the cost of running business.
Yes, but there are little or much that private sectors can actually do to actually draw this very cost or reduce the cost of doing business environment. I think it should rather be the focus and the priorities of the government. Most often, just like we are talking about the Nigerian Youth Academy, the NEYA program, and it's a laudable, like I say, from the face value is good. But when you just oppose it to the living condition, the realities around the economy, you rather will say government rather is jeopardizing. Government obviously is putting programs to jeopardize such kind of laudable events or laudable programs of governments. What do I mean by jeopardizing it? When you have a tax-induced economy, when you have a very hostile economy, business environment for such very young chaps or such very young entrepreneurs to strive. So when you empower them, when you train them, when you give them a skill, and they cannot fit in because of the hostile nature of the environment. So it should be of a real, for the priority level, priority, what do you call it, alertness of the government should be at more than 101%, in the sense that this is what is killing business. This is what is killing ideas. Nigerians, young men are not living their dreams anymore. I saw some of the write-ups of that very publications in regards to that event. Government actually acknowledged that a good percentage of Nigerians are not living their dreams. So if they acknowledge, they should do everything to lower costs of doing business. It took the intervention of people like us who we are on daily basis on televisions to criticize the intentions of government to raise the valued added tax from 7.5% to somewhere progressively to 15%. Well, you know what that would have done to the economy? Would have damaged the economy the more. Government was just focused in raising money to run its project or run its dreams. Nothing is wrong, but do not continue to tax Nigerians or tax the system. You should be innovative to open up other ways to raise revenues to run your programs or run your desires and political wishes. So this should be the concern of government, to make sure that this very cost of living, cost of production is lower, so that by the time you turn out these Nigerian youths, empower them and give them skills, they can fit in. Not after training them, they cannot fit in the economy. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Steve, thankfully, the legislative arm, the House of Assembly, and the Senate were able to wade into these tax reforms and halt the proposed increment of value-added tax. In the same vein, we saw a motion moved by Senator Asuko Ekpenyong yesterday calling for an intervention into the high cost of data. Now, this is off the back of the 50% telecom tariff increase. Now, youths are also lamenting because most youths who use the internet for other jobs to keep body and soul together now have to spend more to access data. How important is this motion, and is there any intervention from the NCC to somewhat reverse this 50% telecom tariff hike approved?
Pardon me, the motion is on what?
On the need to intervene in the cost of data in the country.
Okay. Yes, it should be a concern also to government and those within the corridors of power, given the fact that we are talking about cost of doing business and ease of doing business. And you are also thinking of training and empowering Nigerians in the digital space. And after training them, they can't buy data. What sense does it make? I don't know how many Nigerians that can actually effectively practice within the digital space, considering the quantum of data that is required to apply and do businesses in such space. So I think that should be the concern. And government should also be meaningful in doing things that such as, yes, of course, we need to intervene. We need to not only intervening by policy program, we need to intervene by also providing some incentive to this very industrial player in the telecommunication sector so that they can find reasons to drop in this their cost and tariff hike. Coming to talk about the pressures that it was actually Nigerians that put pressure on the government, not actually the legislature. It was Nigerians who mounted that pressure. The legislature was ready to assert to whatever proposal being brought by the presidency. So kudos to Nigerians, kudos to those governors, kudos to those NGOs and CSOs that stood against that very inimical tax law that suggests that we will pay more than 15% in value-added tax, which is going to take away a lot from Nigerians and give to the government. So I think we need to continually preach, we need to continually advocate for this. So the motion is in the right place. It's a question of government to capture such kind of motion and see how much they can do. Yes, you cannot give a directive to such company or industrial players in the telecommunication space, given the fact that the cost of living and cost of doing businesses have gone up. So in the last 2 years alone, in the last 1.5 years, cost of doing business have tripled, not even doubled. So it's evidential, it's statistically based, so you cannot resist them from raising those costs, because cost of fuel has gone up more than 300-400%. Cost of every other items have gone up. Cost of operation itself have gone up. So I think there should be a meeting point, and that meeting point is government making sure that our programs that can incentivize most of these purchases. You can dedicate some services, dedicate some resources to these very key industrial players For instance, if NTN, Globalcom, and other telecommunications say they are max, they are buying diesel at so price, and this is the volume of diesel they consume to make sure that those marks are up and running, government can say, okay, if it's a million liter you consume daily, we are going to make sure that we provide it at so rate so that you can bring down your costs, because these are the operational costs, and this is the major aspect of their operational costs. Servicing most of their software, yes, of course, is dollar-based, because they will tell you that the technology to service or upgrade the softwares, maybe based in South Africa, based in US, yes, they need to pay dollar. Government can also open a certain window for them to get the dollar required to service, upgrade, and make their softwares functional from a certain window that can give them a certain exchange rate, not in this very prevalent 1,500 or 1,600 per dollar. So these are the programs of government I suggest, I think, can actually make sure that these rates are come. But if you leave it to the realities, they don't have option but to presently suffocate Nigerians with this very hike in tariff. Thank you.
Now let's talk about more programs of governments, particularly under the renewed hope mandate of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He has introduced the Skill Up Artisan program. They've also introduced the SMEs clinics, which a lot of persons are criticizing it for being a little bit politicized in the states it has been deployed in. I don't know what you make of the Skill Up Artisan project and these SMEs clinics that have been deployed in some southwestern states.
Yes, in as much as it's good to come up with programs, but the multiplicity of them is a challenge on itself too. So I think government should pick one and target a certain demography and a certain set of people and see how much the impact and achievement will be. So programs of government should be more of input, output, and impact-based assessments, not just I am throwing this, like I said again, there are multiple of them. In fact, this administration, we have seen a lot of programs, in fact, in dozens of them. And the point is they have left on check. They have left the main premises of programs and policies of government, which must be subjected to this KPI, the Key Performance Index, on the area in the basis of input, output, and impact base. How much of this very program have impacted on Nigerians? So yes, of course, you have multiple of them. You are desirous, you are in a haste to empower Nigerians, to alleviate and eradicate poverty, but we should see the impact in Nigerians, and the data on poverty alleviation should be dropping. But what do we have? We are having more Nigerians being thrown onto the unemployment market, and people are extremely poor. The last statistics suggest that over 140 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. It's speaking to facts that the impact of these very programs are not being fed. If the impact assessment aspect of it is being fed, we should be seeing these very numbers dropping, more Nigerians being in power. But rather, we are seeing that most often these very programs are channels to individuals to enrich themselves and corruptly siphon government funds. So government should rather target programs and subject it to this very basis of input, output, impact assessment, and that's the only way we can have result. Yes, it's good to have such innovative programs that could target few in thousands, in hundreds, in millions of Nigerians, but it should be impactful. That is my concern.
Now let's talk about some of the alternative solutions for entrepreneurs as well. A lot of business owners and entrepreneurs have resorted to self-help. We're looking at alternatives for their power sources. It's also on the cost of available renewable energy. There have been conversations on the need to transition to cleaner energy, likes of solar, electric vehicles are being debated upon. But again, it's the cost of acquisition. In Nigeria as it stands, is there also a call on the government for a subsidy in some of these alternatives?
Yes, of course, that should be. I think those all about ease of doing business it should be centered around accelerating and making sure that those very key components of ease and doing businesses are well tackled. For instance, you can't talk about ease of doing business and when you are talking about high cost of electricity. Nigerians can hardly afford to pay, and there is not also availability and consistency of this very supply to Nigerians. We continue to hear great collapse from now and then. In fact, in this 2025, we had great collapse up to 4 or 5 times. So government should target these very key components or key structural foundations for ease of doing business and make sure that they are much available, if not actually much available, at least relatively or practically good for Nigerians businesses and entrepreneurs to strive. So electricity is part of it, like you talked about. So alternative to it should be like solar. But like you mentioned, what is the cost of purchasing these very solar panels and solar energy supplements? It is quite tremendous. I don't know how many average Nigerians can afford to install a 5 kVA or 4 kVA or 2 kVA solar energy plant. So that's where the challenge is. So a lot have been done to the economy. That's why the anchor point is the strength of Naira. If you have a stable and a very formidable Naira, you can achieve most of this thing. Because if you have an exchange rate at 1,500, you continue to have this very cost piling up, in the sense that is the anchor point of implementation of the programs of government. So we should also look at the other areas of ease of doing business, which has to do with the interest rate. The current interest rate regime we have is more than 27 or 27.5%. That is not healthy, it's hostile for businesses. I don't know how much or how many of these very entrepreneurs can walk down to a bank and access at this current exorbitant interest rate. An average bank cannot give you anything less than 38 to 45%. So how many of these very entrepreneurs can go to bank and receive loan at 39 to 45% and still strive? So these are the things, these are the key components of ease of doing business. Yes, of course, a lot of successes have been recorded in the automation of the Nigerian port system. The ability to clear your goods has significantly improved. But we also need to also assist and make sure that the aspect of the export component of it is also being improved. A good percentage reports are out there that Nigerians are losing their resources as a result of the delayed processes in exporting most of their semi-processed or semi-produced agri-goods get rotten, destroyed before it gets to their destination country. So those are the ease of doing businesses also for such entrepreneurs who will be learning one trade or the other and who will wish to export such services or export such products to the other nations of the world. Exporting this very product requires an ease process of the exporting this very item through the port authorities. So I think these are should be the concerns of the government. Like you actually asked about the solar, is a clear thing that a good percentage of Nigerians cannot actually afford this very alternative to power their system or power their businesses outside the national grid. It's quite exorbitant, it's quite expensive to set up a 4 or 5 kVA solar system. Thank you.
Now, talking about the export windows and some interventions of the government, this morning, news coming in is that the federal government has directed the Nigerian Customs Service to suspend its duty imports on pharmaceutical raw materials. It's also been looked at as one of the struggling sectors in the economy, especially following the exit of giant pharmaceutical companies from Nigeria over the years. Should this policy now be extended to some certain sectors that you deem equally relevant?
Yes, of course, we need such programs because one thing about the economy and the government is the concern of government and the primary purpose of government or governance is the security and welfare of the people. Having acknowledged the fact in the last 18 months or in the last 24 months, 2 years, that we witnessed an increase in cost of doing business, in cost of living, and which have jeopardized the living conditions of Nigerians. And it has also subjected Nigerians to some degrees of health risk, given the fact that the essentials which falls under these food and drugs, Nigerians can hardly afford them. So if government have put up that program to place some level of waiver for some of these pharmaceutical raw materials to enjoy such services of waivers, is a welcome development so that Nigerians can afford to buy paracetamol, buy such drugs that can care for their health needs. So it's a welcome development. And like I said, like you said, yes, it should be extended to other sectors that can also improve in the lives of Nigerians. Yes, of course, we listened a couple of months ago when federal government declared a waiver on food importation. And as we speak, we have not seen any impact of such very program. Remember, I said that the anchor point for a success or assessment of every program is the impact aspect of it. Yes, you have the program. What is the impact in the economy? 6 months ago, you declared it, you celebrated it, you run your propaganda, you run the rhetoric around it, and it sounded good. And we supported government. As we speak, how much are we buying those same goods and services or food items? How much success did this very capitalists or industrial player who are in this very food chain, how much success did they record in bringing this very food without waiver that should have lowered the prices of this very goods? So I think the impact also shows that, yes, nothing actually has been fed in most of these programs. So we should rather be seeing such program impacting in the numbers, also impacting in the lives of Nigerians by improving their living standard. Thank you.
Well, now let's talk about the final segment on this, and it's the brain drain, brain gain phenomenon. It's not only just about the global impact in terms of Nigeria as a country. Even within Nigeria, rural-urban migration also affects part of the job clamor. We find rural areas depleted of their youth strength. Most of these young persons migrating to urban cities in search of greener pastures. How do we balance this on the national scene and even on the international scene when it comes to the Japa syndrome?
Well, I think it's a global phenomenon. People migrate in search of greener pastures. People migrate based on the wage systems. I can have a skill that is being sorted out in UK, and I have opportunity to be there, that I will not leave the shore. So the Japa syndrome is a natural phenomenon. People also, even within the Nigeria, people Japa within Nigeria, people leave the villages. It's also Japa in its sense. People are living in drones from their villages, looking for the greener pastures in places like Abuja, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and the urban cities. So it's also Japa on itself. But now the Japa which we are familiar with is living the shocks of Nigeria. So like I said again, the Japa syndrome is based on the wage system being practiced. If Nigerians are well paid here, nobody will leave the shores of Nigeria. So people are going to areas where the services and job opportunities are available. So the brain drain is a combination of the skills and the availability of those skills, and the factors that draws them are those where those availability of those jobs are. After being trained as a medical doctor, and somewhere and some companies or some medical facilities are available there in Emirates, in Dubai, that can pay me best. They are the pull factors. They will be drawing you. So once you can have the diplomatic aspect of it, which is the visa, you will find yourself there. It's just the diplomatic aspect of it that, because within the shores of Nigeria, within Nigeria, nobody will restrict you. Otherwise, if people will apply for visa to move from Kano or move from Damaturu to Lagos, you will see lesser people going to Lagos or going to Abuja. But because you have a free movement, that's why you can move to those very urban areas where you think that, yes, I can survive, yes, I can make a good living. So the diplomatic or diplomacy aspect of it is where you require visa before a nation, a citizen of Nigeria can go to a nation like UK or can go to a nation in the Europe. So that's where the challenge is. So the drained brain will always be there, and because human being by nature migrate based on the needs and search of greener pasture. So government, on the side of government, both international government and local government should be concerned. Yes, or abroad. That's why they improve in their wage system. That's why they put some incentives so that the best of their brain will not be captured or not be absorbed by other nations. So that's why government make sure they improve in their wage system, they improve in the system so that the social schemes can actually absorb and make their environment livable and conducive for such best brains to be. Otherwise, we'll continue to see other nations harvesting our best brains with the best wages, with the best living condition, and with the best stipends possibly they will be using to attract such individuals. So that's where the challenge is, and it will continue to be. People will continue to look for the best brain, even in the 60s and 70s, even as we speak, although it's no longer rampant. Those days, if you make a first class, you will start seeing companies that will want to absorb you. So you can even read something in medical and another company wants to pick you. It's brain drain. It's taking you from the sector where you should be and practice to another sector where actually is not your profession, but it just thinks that you have the best of the brain. So the brain drain will continue to occur because the world will continue to need the services of Nigerians. From my own perspective about this JAPA, I'm seeing it as a positive thing. What it simply means is that the world is looking for skills Nigerians. The population demography should be an advantage, and it's an advantage, and we should utilize it. We should maximize that opportunity to train Nigerians, equip them so that the world can absorb them. We should not see it as a JAPA brain drain. No. If the world needs medical doctors, why don't we open our medical facilities, our medical institutes, and make sure we train more doctors? That in the next 4 or 5 years, we'll have an ample of doctors that can go out there and bring dollar in form of diaspora remittance. As we speak, diaspora remittance hit about $25 billion, and we need to hit about $50 billion. We can only achieve that if our sons and daughters are working in UK, working in US, working in Europe. So how do we achieve increase in our diaspora remittances except to allow them leave the shores of Nigeria and work, or even work from here and earn such dollars? So government should be focused. By now, I expect state governments widen up their facilities and faculties of this medical space, so that they can absorb more Nigerians as doctors, as nurses. Let's listen to what the world needs and supply them what they need, than to look at it from the brain drain they are living. Yes, of course, it affects you in the sense that by the time you need 100 medical doctors to attend to your local space, and you will now having 50, open up the space. What does it take to open up the space? Train more doctors. Open up the facility, pay more faculties, or extend that program so that they can have more. So we should move away. We should move away from these certifications. You have every other disciplines and they are not contributing. They are not employable. If it is this area and other areas that the world needs the Nigerian services, we should deploy it. That is what India is doing. India is the largest beneficiary of these very programs that they have. Diaspora remittances of India is close to $200 billion annually, while we are just having about $25 billion. So we should improve on that and make sure we train more doctors, more nurses that can leave the shores of Nigeria and practice than having Nigerians leaving the shores of Nigerians without any education, without any skills. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Stephen Nwachukwu, very salient points raised, pertinent questions asked on this topic, and we most appreciate you for lending your thoughts and comments on the program this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Mr. Steve Nwachukwu, a financial strategist and economic analyst, preferring solutions on how Nigeria can bridge its unemployment gap, skill up, and also export talents to the world. Well, it's important to remind you that you can rewatch this conversation on our YouTube channel at ADBN TV_NG.